Hello, everyone. This is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to the Web Talk Show. Today, we're joined by Scott Fulmer, a private investigator, and we're going to have a very interesting show going behind the scenes into the day in the life of a private investigator. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, thank you. I was going to say after this, we can go to Whataburger for lunch.
Nice. Yeah, by the way, we're in the same town, believe it or not, which is a fun little tidbit here. But Scott, why don't you tell our audience who you are so that they get a little background on what we're going to discuss today?
Sure. So I'm a private investigator. I've been a PI for about 30 years, and I'm based here in San Antonio. I'm licensed throughout Texas. I am a father, recently became a grandfather, which is pretty awesome. Went to Colorado and saw my first grandchild, which is a granddaughter, and have three kids. Been married for about 34 years. I'm a Gulf War veteran. I also have a podcast called A Study in Crime, which is a true crime podcast. And then I've also written a book called Confessions of a Private Eye. So other than that, I'm pretty boring.
Well, other than that, so people love a good true crime podcast. How did that come about? How did you get into from being a private investigator to actually doing a show about it?
So, it kind of came out of the book, actually. I mean, I used to blog. I don't know if people blog still. I think they do. But I used to blog back in the day. And I ended up doing another podcast called the Intermountain PI. It was about specifically geared towards private investigators. And then I stopped that, and things got really, really busy. But I really enjoy podcasting. I enjoy talking to people. And so as I finished my book, I still had stories to tell. I wanted to interview people, find out about crimes that they were involved in or where they were victims. And so pretty much went from there. I mean, it's actually pretty easy to get a podcast started. That's the easy part. Keeping it going, that's a whole other ballgame. So
That's very interesting. Do you find, especially in some of these maybe more sensitive subjects, like someone was a victim of a crime or they committed a crime, because we hear some of those in other true crime type podcasts, how difficult is it to find someone that wants to talk about it, and how, like, keeping it, what part of it do you keep sort of secret, but at the same time you do want to tell the story and privacy and all that? Like, how does that work?
that's a good question. Yeah. So I can start by telling you I didn't want to be just like any other podcast. You know, you have your Murder of the Week podcast where every week it's this person got killed. It's just a different location and a different method. And that kind of got old. So with A Study in Crime, I look at all types of crimes. Embezzlement, murder, yes, serial killers, fraud, real estate fraud, that type of thing. And so I have a variety of guests, and most of them have been the people that investigated the crime. Maybe they were the detectives, or they were someone that wrote a book about it. But I do have several that are victims. In fact, the episode that dropped today is called The Louder Prison Redemption. And it's about a woman that committed a real estate fraud and money laundering and went to federal prison for it. So she was what we call the victim, I guess. Although she's guilty, she'll tell you she was. So yeah, I mean, it's a fine line. I don't want to be salacious. I don't want to. I want to get the details out, but I don't want to kind of overdo it. I don't know if that makes sense. With my training as a private investigator, you're trained to interview people and not be excited, not get emotional about what people tell you. I've had a guy tell me in prison that he raped a woman, and I had to just stand there and say, okay, well, how did it happen? Where were you? That type of thing. Because if you react in a really that kind of way, they're going to stop talking to you. So that's kind of how it's gone for me, and I think it's gone pretty well.
Is being a private investigator something that you wanted to do since you were young? How did that evolve? How did you get into that?
Yeah, it really is. It really has been, and I've told the story a few times. So when I was a kid, I loved to read, and my mom didn't have a whole lot of money, big family, 9 kids. and we went to the library a lot because it's free.
Mhm.
And so I would read a lot of books, Sherlock Holmes, The Three Investigators, Encyclopedia Brown. I loved even Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys. I would read all these mysteries, and I really loved them. It's something I just gravitated towards. And my mom and I would also watch the Rockford Files, which was great on TV. I know I'm dating myself. And when I was 16, so it was something I was really interested in. I didn't know how it was going to come about, but I wanted to be an investigator. When I was 16, my uncle, George Kane, became a private investigator in San Antonio. Now, he's passed away many, many years ago, but when he first became a PI, he took me on a couple of surveillances, and I was sitting there on the edge of the seat of the vehicle. I'm sure he was bored because surveillance is boring. But I was like, I knew we were going to solve some amazing crime. I had my Dr. Pepper, my Whataburger, and we were just, I was really into it. So ever since then, it was something I've wanted to do. And I joined the Army for money for college, got a degree in criminal justice, and then at UTSA here in San Antonio. After that, I, started working for somebody else, made my mistakes with someone else, and then started my own company. So I've been doing it for about 30 years.
Wow. So you really followed that path because you enjoyed the whole investigation bit since you were a kid. We all read Sherlock Holmes, and some of us like it a lot, some don't, but we don't all want to actually get into it. Do you think there was something that when everyone is, especially at 16, right? Everyone is sort of thinking of these different careers that are the common careers. I imagine, Did you have any setbacks? Did people ask you, like, why go towards that path? What are you thinking? Or was it a straight, easy flow?
No, it wasn't always easy. I mean, I've worked for different private investigation companies before I started doing my own thing. But, and there were people that said, yeah, you need to get a real job. But I'm not, we all have different characteristics about ourselves. We're all very different, which is good. It makes the world interesting. I am not the kind of person that can sit behind a desk Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, making widgets or doing what have you. I just don't have a lot of patience for that. I mean, I can sit behind a desk, I can do the things that need to be done, but I just cannot do it in this predictable way. And with being a private investigator, I call it's the most exciting, boring job you'll ever have. So every day is different. Monday's different from Tuesday, and you never know. Like I was in, where was I? Laredo a few weeks ago, last month, and so you never know what you're going to do when you start following someone. I followed a guy from San Antonio. He was in Bernie. He left, kept going, kept driving. I'm like, where are you going? And he ended up all the way in Corpus Christi, which is about the beach, 2.5 hours away for those not familiar with Texas. So you never know what's going to happen. So that's kind of why I gravitated towards it, because of just the general nature of it. But yeah, and it wasn't always easy. I mean, being self-employed is not for the faint of heart. You have to pay taxes, which kind of stinks. I mean, I pay them, but you know what I mean. And so there's all kinds of parameters and all kinds of things. And when you have employees, there's payroll. So it can be, the business aspect can be a real big headache.
That makes sense. I see you post a lot about being a Texas private investigator as yourself, but also I don't know, from what I gather in some of your posts, you sort of invite people to become a Texas private investigator. Why would someone want to become? I mean, obviously you already explained a very interesting reason. And if you don't want something boring, you want something that's different every day. But what makes it appealing for someone who maybe hasn't been in this space at all and might think, hey, I could work at Whataburger. I could get a desk job somewhere, or I could train to become this. Like, why would that be something you think, or who fits that profile if someone listening should maybe consider it?
Well, surprisingly, a lot of people can fit that profile. You look at, I've known private investigators or people who became PIs that were claims adjusters. They were real estate agents. I knew one that was a radio personality. I used to call them disc jockeys. I knew one that was a librarian. And so it just, a skip tracer, it just depends. There's lots of different career fields that can bring you here. And I think part of it is just innate. People have this burning desire to solve a mystery, or they want to, they're curious. They need to find out things and learn things, and that's a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and funny that you mentioned that. I actually have a course coming up in July, if I may mention that. Of course,
please.
So to be a private investigator in Texas, you have to be licensed. You're licensed by the state. And if you're not, then you get in big heap doo-doo. So get your license. But anyway, so I have a course, and it is with the Northside ISD, which is the Northside Independent School District. It's one of the school districts here in San Antonio, and it is part of their adult and continuing education department. And in July, on 3 specific evenings in July of this year, I will be teaching my course, Private Investigator 101. And I'll teach you everything you need to know to be a private eye, and it's live. I'm there in person. It's not online or anything like that. I believe the course is $79, and so if that's something that someone's interested in, it's a great opportunity. You can go to nisd.net/ACE for Adult Community Education, and there's more information there.
That's great, and I'm glad that the city is doing that sort of thing. I mean, that's the if you didn't catch that, the listeners, the school district, one of the school districts here has this program amongst other adult-oriented programs, which is very interesting. I think many of us don't know that. We just think of when we see all the school buses and everything related to the ISD, right. It's just like for the kids, but. I mean, this is excellent that they actually have continuing education for adults, and maybe even not continuing education, just actually starting in some cases, I imagine.
I mean, yeah. I mean, everything, you can get your GED that way with them.
Yes.
You can learn cha-cha dancing. You can learn how to build a website. They have courses in accounting, how to start a business, how to write a book, how to do a podcast. I mean, they've got everything. And it's primarily for adults. I think you have to be 18 or over, but it's primarily for adults who want to do something different, have the time.
That's great. And anyone who's listening live, because we're doing this show live today, you can drop comments in the LinkedIn comment section or chat, and if we see them, if they actually pop up, we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have for Scott or myself. And let me actually bring this up over here just to see if we have any comments right now, because I did see someone drop in and leave a comment, which was Mark. Hello, Mark. How are you? Good morning. He says, should be a fun and insightful chat. Hope you're well. Hope you're well as well, Mark. And perfect. All right. So
I don't want to let you down, Mark.
We've
got some of the my hair and makeup people did not show up today. But that's only because I don't have any. We'll just go with what I look like.
And I was telling Scott, my device that I use for my main camera died last night all of a sudden. So that's why if you've seen any other episodes, you'll see a big difference in what the screen looks like right now. Unfortunately, most people listen to the podcast, so we should be good in that regard.
You look just like Al Pacino, so don't worry.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess. So, Scott, is it like the movies at all? What we see in the movies, private investigators running around people, like finding people, chasing them, etc., trying to figure out, hiding behind trash cans. Is it as exciting as that? Is it all just dramatized on TV, or is part of it actually accurate?
I would say yes and no. Part of it is actually accurate. A lot of it is just dramatized for television to make it exciting, because nobody would want to watch a 1-hour TV show of me sitting in my vehicle, with a camera watching someone's front door for an hour. you know, eating some trail mix or things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's as I mentioned earlier, it's probably the most exciting, boring job you'll ever have. There are periods of it that are extremely boring. For example, surveillance, which I've already mentioned, it's where you sit there for hours and wait for your subject to do something, wait for them to leave, and then it gets really exciting because you got to follow them through traffic and hopefully not lose them, which does happen. They never lose anybody on TV, but in real life you do lose them on surveillance. Plus, on television, they're right smack behind them. You know, we don't get that close in real life. The other thing it doesn't show in TV is that it's hot or it's cold, and both are equally uncomfortable. Like last summer, we had I think we had 27 days straight of 100+ degrees. Yeah, that is no bueno. I didn't like that at all. So, you know, you can run the air conditioning a little bit. You can crack your windows. You look for shade. There's all kinds of little, you know, tricks of the trade that we use. But you have to deal with the heat. You have to deal with the cold. You have to deal with having to use the restroom, eating, you know, because you can't leave and run over to In-N-Out Burger to grab something, because right when you do that, your subject's going to drive away. So you have to be prepared with everything, water, everything you have when you go there. So, yeah, so a lot of that. I mean, like in the Rockford Files, Jim Rockford would get beaten up every few episodes. I've never been beaten up. And so that's a plus, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd say part of it is accurate. A lot of it is just kind of exaggerated for a television or movie audience.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you'll see some campouts where, they're cold in the van or whatever and trying to turn on. But you don't see too much of the heat aspect. And here in Texas, being in the car in the heat, that could be tough.
I know. I always see these shows where it's like 100 degrees outside and they're in the van, you know, just having a cup of coffee, chatting, waiting for the subject to leave. That's not what it's like. So, but you know,
and you can keep it on always because you either have fuel or battery that you have to keep track of.
I know a PI that does that. He basically he runs his air conditioning the entire time.
Really?
He may turn it off here or there. But he runs it the entire time, and he says, I've been through about 6 air conditioning systems in my car. He's had to get them replaced because they only last so long. But I'm getting ready to buy a new vehicle, and my new one will be a hybrid. So with those vehicles, you can actually run the air conditioner off the battery with the engine off. So it's a miracle.
Yes, that is a plus. There's a particular thing I like with electric cars, for example, that may apply to some hybrids as well, which is since the AC can run off the battery, it is easier for it to stay cool. So even if you just park the car and you go shopping, you come back and it will always be under 95 degrees.
Oh, I like that. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. I can't get like a Tesla. I can't go totally electric because, for example, I think the Tesla's 300 miles is all as far as they go on one charge. And if I'm driving down to Corpus, I can't stop and get a charge while the guy keeps driving down the road. So
yeah, it wouldn't work for what you're doing. It wouldn't work. They're great cars, but any electric. But that's the big thing because we've sort of seen that happen where city driving. Excellent. But then you want to take a trip and go to El Paso. That's tough because you have to stop midway and charge for a while if there are chargers, if they're not full, if you're not in a hurry. And so in your case, you're definitely going to be in a hurry trying to catch your subject. So yeah, fuel is still. So a hybrid actually that's a very good call. That's smart.
I'm looking forward to it.
Are you getting a plug-in hybrid?
Well, I haven't really looked at one of the things about doing surveillance like I do is you put a lot of miles on a vehicle. So I currently have a Ford Escape, and I just hit 250,000 miles. And the Ford Escapes are rated for about 250,000 miles. And I'm hearing these noises, and air conditioner blows, and it kind of slows down, and it comes back up, and I'm thinking, I hope this vehicle can last for the next few months till I decide, what I'm going to buy and where I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to think of a lot of things. There's everyone, and that's why I like these shows, because we start talking to people about what they do in their day to day, and there's so many nuances. Like, what type of car can you use in that particular profession?
Sure.
Do you need a specific range so that you can actually follow people? Does it need to be quiet? Like, I imagine you have all sorts of tools and little gadgets that you might need or help you in what you do, right? Is there anything you can share, like little secret items that are helpful for a PI that maybe we regular people wouldn't use on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch Magnum PI, I do not drive a Ferrari. That's not a kind of vehicle you want to do surveillance in, because everybody looks at them and notices them, right? I mean, even when Teslas first came out, everybody noticed them. Now they're everywhere, a dime a dozen. But so you have to use a vehicle that has is a normal kind of a subdued color: black, brown, gray, white, silver. No bright yellow, no bright red, bright green. Nothing. You want to blend in. And so in terms of equipment, the technology has really come a long way since when I started. When I started, we actually had these huge, bulky cameras where you put videotapes in.
Oh yeah, I
And
remember.
now the camera I can hold in the palm of my hand, it's digital, 4K, and everything goes on an SD card. And so that's a plus. Plus, they weigh a lot less than those huge, bulky ones. Some of the other technologies that I use is I often follow people into a store. I may follow them into a mall, and they're shopping everywhere, or I follow them into the grocery store. I follow people into H-E-B, which is a huge grocery store chain down here. And we should be getting sponsorships for that.
For every mention.
H-E-B, but anyway. And so how do you go in and follow someone and videotape them in a store without them realizing it? So what we do is there's all different kinds of methods. There are pins that have video cameras. There are glasses. There are ties. There's what we call button cameras that looks just like a button. And it's a camera.
Mm-hmm.
My preference, though, is to use a key fob. And they look like just any other kind of key fob, the button for the trunk, the button to unlock. They don't do anything for your car, of course.
Mm-hmm.
When you press those buttons, that's when the camera starts recording. And they have some in like 8K or 4K at this point, but that
Really?
technology is too advanced for a lot of the clients still. We're still working with 1080p. And so I will follow them in with my key fob. I'll put some groceries in my arm and have the camera facing them, or I don't even have to look at them. My wife watches these videos occasionally, and she says, how do they not know? Because I'm standing right next to the person. How do they not know? They're not paying attention to me. I'm just standing there with my keys and, a bottle of shampoo or oatmeal or whatever. And I'm just like any other shopper. Now, one thing I will say is that folks will say, well, why do you need to videotape people inside public businesses? And it's only in public businesses. Those are primarily workers' comp cases or insurance fraud cases. For example, I know you might find this hard to believe, but some people exaggerate their injuries in vehicle accidents and workplace accidents.
No.
I know.
Really?
I know it's hard to believe, but people do that, and a lot of them are legitimately injured, but some of them aren't. But the ones that are legitimately injured will still exaggerate it to get more money. So they will have restrictions, like they'll say, I can't stand, I can't walk for any extended period of time, I can't lift, I can't do this, I can't use my right wrist, what have you. And so that's why when we follow them in, like I follow some guy into Lowe's, and he's getting lumber or he's getting power tools, and he's using his back and his wrist and all the different body parts that he says that he allegedly he cannot use.
Right.
I get that on video, and they have no idea. So that's some of the technology we use. A lot of it is stuff that everybody uses: the cell phone, video cameras, which people use, digital cameras, the computer, use those all the time. So maybe not as high speed. A lot of the stuff that you see on TV and movies that they do is illegal, like wiretapping. We don't do that. Breaking and entering, don't do that. So not everything is accurate that way. But those are the primary tools I use as well.
That's something that I actually wanted to talk about because it's very interesting. And before getting into my question, just to preface it for the audience, because we have all sorts of listeners. So some might be screaming, what do you mean you're following them and recording them? So what's the legality behind all this? Just in very general terms, not attorney speak or anything. So people understand when this is okay for a certified private investigator to do and with scenarios, etc. Maybe that should shed some light onto some of the misconceptions we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not an attorney, although I play one on TV. I'm just kidding. I'm not an attorney. So this is not legal advice, but I can just tell you what I do. So I'm licensed here in Texas. When you follow someone, and when you go to a public business, I think legally you are what they call a business invitee. By virtue of it being a public business, you are invited there. Now, they can tell you, I don't want you coming here, leave, which Walmart does, and people, probably Waffle House does after people get into fights at Waffle House, but that's a whole nother podcast. So it's basically public. And when you're in public, you can listen to what people say. You can put a camera on them. Even if I had an overt camera where I walked in and was filming them, there's nothing that they technically could do. Nobody would like it. I wouldn't like it. And we don't want them to know that we're following them. That's why we use the covert means. But so we're dealing primarily with public property, going to, businesses. I followed a lady to Fiesta, Texas, and she went on the roller coaster. Now, if some of the people there, realize that you're videotaping, they can ask you to leave, and you would have to leave because it would be trespassing. But essentially, if it's a public place, anybody can go. Now, we're not going to go to your house. Well, we're going to go to your house, but we're going to sit on the street because it's a public street. But we're not going to walk up to your window and look in the window and videotape. We're not going to look over the fence and put the camera over, that type of thing. When it comes to your private residence like that, we can only shoot video of what we can see from the public street. And there are some limitations. Like if the guy opens a garage door and he's lifting weights, he's got the garage door open, I'll shoot video of that. If it's what I won't do, and there are different laws, by the way. California, way different laws. So every state has different laws when it comes to privacy and things like that. But people do have an expectation of privacy in their own home. For example, if I come to someone's house and I can see them through their front window and they are on the exercise bike or whatever, I probably would not videotape them through the front window because it's not like the garage where, it's huge and wide open. They have they have an expectation of privacy in their home. And so it wouldn't be something that would look good in court. So that's I hope that answers your question.
It does. So yeah, that concept sounds good. The expectation of privacy. So I'm here, the shutters are slightly open, but someone can clearly, maybe not clearly, but if they're looking, they could see, but that wouldn't really help maybe a PI if they're looking for something, because in court it might just look like you're sort of
Oh, and I will tell you one other thing. A lot of folks will say, well, you're stalking. You're stalking me and that's illegal. Nah, I'm not stalking you. A private investigator is licensed, and if we're following you, we're doing it covertly. You don't know we're behind you. You don't know we're next to you at Neiman Marcus, videotaping you. And that's the way that type of work does. Stalking is when someone follows you for nefarious reasons, and you are aware that they are following you, and you are aware that they mean you harm. And so that is a crime, and that's totally different from what I do.
Interesting. So stalking is typically, if I'm understanding this correctly, known by the subject.
Eventually it will be. And the stalking is done in many ways. It can be on the computer. It could be, right. Being always outside the person's house every time they walk out. But the point is that the victim is aware of this, of the stalking. And the stalkers do this to instill fear in the victim. And if we're doing our job right as private investigators, nobody knows we're there.
That's very interesting. I had not actually thought about the two words and the different connotations and meanings, which is very interesting. I was gonna mention before going to the clarification of what you should and should not do, and I remember going to B&H Photo Video in New York. We just walked by. We were walking in the neighborhood, and we saw, we're like, oh, B&H, the actual store, because we know it from online. And so we go in, this fantastic shop with so many cameras and widgets and everything related to photography and the like. And we went up to the second floor, I believe it was, and they had all these little covert surveillance type things, the pens and the glasses. And this was before like meta glasses and all that. And it was so neat. I just felt I was in a murder mystery or something. It just, I just wondered, wow, people can actually just go in the store and buy this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can. The equipment, that's a good point, because a lot of people, were using super spy equipment. Not really. I mean, we spy with the equipment, but it's not like it's something that, other people can't buy. I'm familiar with B&H, of course, from online. I think I bought some stuff from them. Those guys are great. But, I mean, anybody can buy the equipment, but, if you are using it for some other reason than PI work, we're going to question you. What's going on there?
And that's something in general for everyone. There are tools for the trade that you cannot legally use in any trade. So let's say lockpicks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the picks themselves are not illegal. Having them on you as someone who's not a locksmith, and perhaps being in the vicinity of something where it looks suspicious, that's a problem. So if you have them because it's a creative endeavor, you're learning, it's a hobby, it's different from actually carrying them with you and being close to the scene of a crime or any other thing. You can really get in trouble for that sort of stuff. So there are tools that you have to just in any industry be careful with, even though they might look fun, like some of the ones we're discussing today. One should exercise caution to stay on the good side of the law.
Yeah, I was going to say, and speaking of technology, like I said, I've done this for 30 years, and things have, when I started, it was analog, it was tape. Now it's digital. And now we have Ring cameras. We've got Nest cameras. We have these video camera doorbells where a person may not even be at home. They may be in Duluth, Duluth, Minnesota on vacation. You knock on the door, can I help you? So they will see you. They can. I've actually gathered some of that video from accidents that had happened in front of people's homes, and the person was willing to provide the video. Plus, you've got cameras all over the house, on exterior cameras, because when things went digital, it drove the price down quite a bit, and so folks were able to do that. Plus, it's all tied to Wi-Fi, so you can sit there at work and be on your phone and see somebody breaking and entering into your home. So that makes it a little bit more dangerous, and you have to be a little bit more careful there.
That makes a lot of sense. We actually have a couple of questions from some of the guests here on the live stream. Valerie Fulmer. Do you know her by any chance? She asks, hello, Valerie, by the way. She asks, what is the biggest myth about being a private investigator?
Valerie is my wife, by the way. So, in case for those listening at home, that's who she is. She's awesome. The biggest myth, I would say, probably what you just mentioned. You're talking about lockpicks. It's the biggest myth is that we do all these illegal things, like we break and enter, we hack your uncle or your wife's Facebook account. We can hack into your sister's phone or your lover's phone from miles away. We can put listening devices and little bugs in your home. That's probably the biggest myth, and that's from television, from movies. That's where all that comes from. Are all those things possible? They are. Yes, they are possible. But legitimate, licensed, professional, ethical private investigators do not do those things. And those who do end up going to jail.
That's good to know. What is the typical case? Because on TV and movies, we always see cheating, right? There's theft as well, and maybe in work-related thefts, fraud, that sort of thing. What do you see most often? And then a follow-up to that, what would be like one crazy example of something that just blew your mind that it actually happened or that you were actually working on it, and without releasing any sensitive details, of course.
So in terms of typical, it depends on what you do. So all private investigators don't do all kinds of services. There are many that don't do surveillance at all, but they are in the office. They do background investigations, or those that do executive protection, or those that serve subpoenas and citations. There are those that do surveillance. So there's all different there's all different kinds. So all I can tell you is what I do. I primarily do surveillance related to domestic cases, which is child custody, divorce, infidelity, as well as insurance fraud, workers' comp fraud. I do background investigations, missing persons, trying to find people. That's another huge one. A lot of people do. We use proprietary databases. We use public records. We go knock on doors, and we try to find witnesses, people who are heirs to, money, not the Nigerian prince scam, but actual money. And so that's some of the things that I do and that private investigators do. But like you said, cheating spouses, that's kind of the one thing that everybody thinks of. And they think of that because it's the one that you see most in television and things like that. In terms of what has, nothing really surprises me anymore. At first I was like, some of the stuff I've seen or heard, but I did have an interesting case. Now, I've told this one in the past. I hope people aren't tired of it. I did have an interesting case that was kind of crazy. It was a theft case, and so you get these where the insurance company asks investigators to go out to the home, to take pictures, to get a list of what was stolen, to interview the people there. Now, this doesn't happen on every claim. It usually happens on claims that have red flags, for example. So there's maybe some suspicion that the homeowner it's a false claim, or that they are involved in it, that type of thing. For example, I had one where a bunch of guns were stolen from a safe, and I went and interviewed the folks, and they were nice enough, but they did say that they had gone to the range and shot all their weapons. Then they put them in the safe, and they didn't close the safe. They had little kids, so that was kind of weird to start with. The other thing is, I said, well, when did you clean the weapons? I said, well, we didn't clean them. Like, no, anybody who owns a firearm, you don't go to the range and then go home and not clean the weapon. I mean, unless you want to get a misfire later on or have a weapon that's in bad shape. You always clean the firearm after. So those are the kind of red flags that showed up. But the case I had was a guy that lived in, I'm confused because in my book, I tell a lot of these stories in my book, and which is available on Amazon. In my book, shameless plug there.
That's good. That's good.
And in my book, I do different locations. I change the names, everything like that. So half the time I can't remember anymore. But this was a guy that was in Colorado. He lived on top of a mountain, not a big mountain, high up. And there was about 3 or 4 houses there. It was a semi-rural area. And he was like 85 years old, and he had a whole bunch of things stolen from his house. So the claims adjuster said, something kind of weird here. I'm getting an off-kilter reading. So they asked me to go up and talk to the guy. So I went up there, met him, nice enough guy. I asked for the list of everything that was missing, and he gave me an itemized list. He had receipts, really sharp as a tack guy. I looked around the house. There were no signs of entry. I said, well, how did they get in? He says, well, I don't know. And he had this really high-speed security system. Unfortunately, I think the salesperson took advantage of him. But this was like security system for like NASA or, the NSA or something for a house.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, yeah, I covered every aspect, every corner, interior, exterior of his home. And he had the monitors. He says, but I never go to town. I'm always here. He says, when it happened, I went to town. I was gone for about 2 hours. I went to town, came back. Remember, he's in a rural area, and all this stuff was missing. And I said, okay. So he says the camera blacked out during those 2 hours. Well, that's kind of suspicious. That's what we call a clue in the PI business. And as I'm talking to him, he says, and these things, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, he had like an ATV that was taken, weapons that were taken, silverware, tools. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. Mm-hmm. And as I'm talking to him, he kept peppering his conversation with this phrase, they all think I'm crazy. Now, he didn't sound crazy. He didn't act crazy. He didn't look crazy. But as I'm going on and on, I start to I think that, maybe the theft didn't happen. There's a Sherlock Holmes dictum that is popular. It says, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must point to the truth. And so I started to think maybe the theft didn't really happen. Short story long, I talked to his neighbors. I talked to his daughter who lived in town, and I found out the truth. Now, one thing I will say, one of the first red flags is there was no police report filed. Mm-hmm. And I asked the guy, well, why didn't you file a police report? He says they wouldn't file one, which is really bizarre. The police, they don't like to file reports. I get it. But in a theft of this magnitude, yeah, they would have filed a report. So anyway, I talked to the daughter and the neighbor, and basically they said that he is suffering from, and is kind of sad, the early stages of dementia. And he would have these sundowner disease. So he was really sharp in the mornings. And as the day went on, he would be less sharp. He would remember less. And what had happened was he had given and or sold all these items years ago or recently. And so there was no theft. Nothing was stolen. And he just could not remember that he had given them away or sold the items. And plus, he was probably pretty lonely up there on the mountain. And I got the feeling that his daughter didn't spend a lot of time with him. So I called the claims adjuster and said, hey, it's funny, but it's sad. I said, there was no theft. And I explained everything that I just explained to you. And I also said, but there was no fraud. He wasn't doing this to defraud the insurance company. It's a mental health issue, and he just doesn't remember. So I don't know how they resolved it, but they didn't send him any money because they didn't. All those things were given away years before.
But that's a very interesting story. But it was very nice of you to actually push on that, and even if it's just part of your report, I guess not everyone would do that.
I will say that one of the primary talents that private investigators have, and this is pretty much no matter what you do, whatever services you provide, that is of interviewing and taking a statement. And when you do this for as long as I have, I'm not saying I'm psychic, which I'm not, but when you do it long enough, you start to recognize body cues. You start to recognize language. You can tell a lot of times when people are lying, or they're stretching the truth, or they're not telling you everything, which is pretty much all the time. And so the longer you do that, you tend to really kind of hone in on specific things. And that's why with him, and he kept saying, they all think I'm crazy. I started to think, well, he said that like 3 or 4 times now. Maybe you are. Or maybe there's something else going on here. So
I see. That makes a lot of sense too. And we talked about this briefly in some of the other shows where, like, the myths of the body language, right? Actually, with Mark as well. And yes, there are these myths where people take it as gospel, like, yeah, these are the tactics and look for this, but it's not that. And we talked about it in the other shows. So anyone who hasn't watched that show, go and listen to the show with Mark. But what you're saying is years of practice and years of experience in the field that give or hone your intuition into knowing what you've already experienced from different people. And our bodies are very good at abstracting based on many data points. So it's not like a magic trick or it's always this, but it's you feel it and you sort of start, as you were just saying, there are some cues that for you now tell you, is this person deceiving me? Or, and maybe in this case, it looks like this person might be deceiving himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, if you would go to any police department, talk to any homicide detective, and they will tell you that they had a gut instinct on a specific case, and you're like, well, I don't know what your stomach has to do with anything, but that's because that experience, your little antennas go up, and you figure something's not right, and then you try to figure it out. But I mean, there's a lot of body language that if you've had children. Did you take the cookie? No, not me. So there's a lot of body language that you get used to. You can tell, when people fold their arms and they're looking away from you. They don't look in the eye. That could be some issues. But yeah, it's primarily just the experience of doing that for years and years and years, where you just kind of get a feel for things. And I mean, you have to fight to not be cynical about it, because I pretty much believe people are not telling me the truth right off the bat. And that's kind of the way things are. I mean, even clients will not tell you everything. Instead of, they'll say, I need you to check out my wife. I think that she's cheating on me. And then they will not tell you, well, she's cheated 3 times before, but because they're embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of information I need to know, because if she has, chances are she is still. And men cheat as well, so I just use women as an example. But yeah, it's just something that takes a long time, and it's like I said, I'm not psychic. There are people that teach body language classes. There are, there's the read technique, which are certain ways to question suspects, courses that you can take, and so there's all kinds of things. But it's just the experience, I think, of doing this for so long.
That's very interesting. The way we think things work is not necessarily the real way.
Right.
And so it's
yeah.
We always learn. And I love talking to different people because you always learn from someone, even from your kids, like you were saying. You just watch them and you learn things about yourself too. Like sometimes you see something and then it might trigger a memory and be like, oh, I remember when I did that. And you go back, which is a lot of fun. There was this other question here, but I can't seem to load here I am, by Valerie as well. And there's one by Stacy Johnson. Stacy asked, what was one of your most exciting cases? So, I mean, you already gave us a very good example, but if you have a more exciting one, Stacy Johnson is interested. And then Valerie asked, can you share a case that helped you know you were really making a difference? That's a great question, Valerie.
Yeah, that is, Valerie, that's a great question. And what was Stacy's question again? I'm old.
No, it's fine. It's too many questions. A case that was, I guess, the most exciting case, or a very exciting case
Okay, I can answer both questions with the same case.
Awesome.
And it was a non-custodial parent kidnapping of a child here in San Antonio. And I think the child, this was a long time ago, I think 20 years ago, I think the child was around 6 or 7, maybe 8 years old, and the father had full custody, legal custody, everything. The mother had some mental health and drug issues, and so she was allowed visitation only. She did not have any kind of a custody issue. The courts primarily will do they're supposed to do whatever is in the best interest of the child. And in this case, it was definitely the child being with the father. Sometimes it's being with the mother. The best thing is being with the father and a mother, obviously. But the mother had gone to his school, took him out, disappeared. And so the father, it was actually the father's parents, the child's grandparents, that hired us to try to locate the child. And we, it was a really difficult case. It took us several months, and we did surveillance. And one of the problems was that the wife had a sister who looked a lot like her. They weren't twins, but they looked very similar. And to make matters worse, the sister had a son as well, and he looked a lot like the the woman's son, the wife's son. And so when we did surveillance, it was always very confusing. You don't want to go grab the wrong child. That's a big, you'll end up in prison for that. That's called kidnapping. Yeah, so we don't do that. And so we had to make sure that we had the right child. And this went on for a couple of months, and just were not having much luck. I mean, we did surveillance, we followed, we did all kinds of record checks, and nothing. And then eventually, and I don't recall how we found this out, but we found out that the mother had to be at another town in Texas, and she was picking up her W-2 from a job from the previous year, and so she could file taxes. Excuse me. And so we said, well, let's go set up surveillance on this specific day. We weren't sure what time she was going to be there, but we knew it was going to be a specific day. And we will, see if she has a child with her. And we'll just maybe luck. And we also brought the client with us. Now, normally you would never, ever, I know they do it on TV, but you would never, ever bring a client with you on an actual case, on an actual surveillance. That's a recipe for disaster. But in this case, because his ex-wife and her sister and his son and his, I guess would have been his nephew, were very similar looking, we had to have him there to make sure he could ID them. So anyway, we go there, we set up surveillance. It's me, he's in another vehicle, I'm in my surveillance vehicle, and I have another PI, an associate in another vehicle. And we sit there and wait, and we wait, and hours go by, and I'm, my nerves are, my stomach's like a ball of nerves, because, there's not a lot of, there's no room for error in a lot of what we do. It's not like being a surgeon, but in the same way it is, in that you can't make mistakes. There's just no, you make mistakes, it's bad. Mm-hmm. For example, taking the wrong child. And so we waited, and eventually I saw them show up. They parked, and it was a big set of stairs to this building, and the mother got out, her sister got out, and a little boy got out, and they walked up the stairs. So I recognized his ex-wife, but I didn't know if the boy was his son or her sister's son. And so I called him on, this is before text messages. I called him on the cell phone. I had to pull my antenna up. I said, hey, and I don't remember his name. We'll call him Armando. How about that?
Yeah.
I said, hey, Armando, and it wasn't you, by the way. I'll say, hey, did you see them? Was that your son? He goes, no, what are you talking about? Obviously, he wasn't trained in surveillance. He got bored and tired of sitting around and looking. I said, well, I believe it's your son. They already went inside. And I said, well, when they come out, you need to have your eyes, peel your eyes right on that front door. As soon as they come out, and let us know. And so the door opens, a little boy's there. And you know how kids kind of walk in front of you sometimes, mm-hmm. little kids, and they're still at the door getting ready to go down the stairs. He's already halfway down the stairs, doom, doom, hopping like kids do. And I get the call right away, and the client says, that's my boy, that's my son. I said, all right, go ahead and grab him. So he gets out of the car, he grabs him, runs back to the car, and I moved my car in a position to kind of block them, but he spends too much. As soon as the boy saw his father, they ran to him, he hugged him, and he spent too much time embracing the child, which I understand because he'd been gone for 2 months. But he spent too much time embracing him and holding him and, oh, I love you, and I'm so glad to see you, instead of just getting the heck out of Dodge. The plan was for him to grab the child and go, and we were going to just basically kind of block her in to some extent so he could get away and get out of town. So she, of course, recognized him, recognized that this is a bad situation. She ran and got in her car and parked it right behind his, so he couldn't get out. So it was a pretty bad deal. She was pretty much calm. I thought she was going to lose it, but she was pretty much calm at that part. She kept telling him, he's better off with me. He's better off with me. And the father was holding his son on the hood of his car, just holding him there, wouldn't let him go because he knew if he did, she would grab him. So I called the police. We called the police. They showed up, and I had the court order saying that the client had all the legal rights to the child, and the police were like, okay, whatever. They didn't really seem to care too much. And they wanted to get the whole story. So they put the boy in one police car, they put the ex-wife in another, and they put cuffs on my client and put him in another car. They didn't know. I mean, they put cuffs on because they didn't know the situation, which is understandable until they realized what's going on. He was being detained. All of them were. And so I'm just standing there talking to another police officer, and I said, what's going on? And he said, well, we've called CPS, Child Protective Services, and we're going to let CPS. This is a civil matter, and as if you know, you deal with police. They don't like dealing with civil matters. They primarily like to deal with criminal matters. Civil matters end up in the court, and who knows. So they called Child Protective Services, and this woman came out, and she was probably 24. A lot of those CPS investigators are really young. It's a really high-stress job with high turnover. And she went from one car to the other, one police car to the ex-wife, to the father, to the child, and she talked to all of them, interviewed all of them. And the police told me, he says, well, we're going to release the child to whomever she says to release to. I said, all right, well, hopefully she makes the right choice here. And we handed the documents to the police officer. He handed them to her. And as I like to say, short story long, when it was over, she said, we're going to turn the child over to the father, which is the one that should legally have the child. And so we did that. I asked the police officers, can you hold her, the ex-wife, hold her here for a while, let us get out of town? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So the father and the son got in one car, me and the other investigator got in our cars, and we took off, and we drove several miles down the road in really weird directions, kind of just make sure she couldn't follow us. And we ended up at an Arby's restaurant, and we were going to meet the grandparents there. They were technically the client. They're the ones that paid. And so we waited and waited for the grandparents, and as we're waiting for them, the father is talking to his son, and evidently he had been in Mexico. His mother had kidnapped him, taken him to Mexico, and he had been there. He didn't speak Spanish, so he didn't really understand what was going on. And he'd been there, hadn't gone to school, and had been there for a couple of months, and then that's when she came back. She didn't leave him there, and she brought him into where she got her W-2. And then at that point, the grandparents arrived, and they were really short couple, older couple, really cute looking couple. And when the boy saw his grandparents, he lit up and he went and ran and hugged them, and it was just a great feeling. It's a kind of ending to a case that we don't always see, even with like fraud or insurance fraud. We give them the evidence and we move on to the next case. So we don't always know what happens unless we testify in court, which we do occasionally. Anyway, they hugged him, and it was just a great feeling, and it made me realize, well, I'll tell you what it made me realize here in a second. As we're standing there, the grandmother comes up to me, and she doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't speak English. She only speaks Spanish. I speak just enough Spanish to tell the hotel chambermaids that I need the trash taken out and new towels. That's all I can do. Toalletas y basura. But anyway, and I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. But she's talking to me in Spanish and looking at me, and her eyes, she has tears in her eyes, and I didn't need to speak Spanish. I could tell exactly what she was saying, and then she hugged me. And that's the one and only time I've ever been hugged by a client. Not a good idea to hug your clients. And it made me realize what I do, it's not just a job. I'm not just going to make a burger. I'm not just going to, repair eyeglasses every day. I am making a difference in people's lives. I make a real difference. What I do is important. And it was especially important to them. And it helped solve their problem. And then they left and went on their way. And it just really made me feel good to be able to do that.
Wow. That's a great story. So I'm very unfortunate. I'm glad Stacy asked the question, but and Valerie, both of them sort of, because it was the same answer. But man, so yeah, I was thinking exciting, whole other way. This was very.
Yeah.
You kept me on the edge of my seat, but in the whole story, by the way. So it was exciting, but also drama and everything. You're good. That's amazing. And for listeners, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with Scott. Sometimes we get ideas of what someone does based on what we see in the billboards, based on what we see on TV, based on what other people tell us about that particular industry. And some might have positive and some might have negative connotations, but we never really know what happens behind the scenes. And I think this is an extraordinary example of how a PI can change someone's life so greatly in a good way. And it's more than just fraud cases and theft and cheating. It's
right.
these sort of civil cases that are very sad. I mean, the fact that the boy went to another country against his will, really. I mean, he didn't know what was happening, but it's his mom, and I understand that's got to be tough.
Right.
But if she had any mental issues or wasn't in any other sort of trouble, and she was not doing it the right way, it's very dangerous for the boy. And the fact that you were able to reunite that family, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
And not every case turns out that way. So there are some times where we don't find what we're looking for, where we're not able to help. Sometimes a client will ask something, and like we say off the bat, I can't help you. I can't do that. Either it's illegal or it's unethical, or I don't have the training. But so they don't always end that way. But and for the last 30 years, I spent most of my time dealing with people who lie, cheat, steal, commit fraud, all the bad parts of the Bible. And then I have to go home, la, 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 how's everybody, and, be all happy. So I've been able to deal with that by being a bit stoic about it. So it can be difficult to deal with that all day long, and then just try to. It's kind of like a police officer as they deal with people who mistreat them or are disrespectful and call them names, and then they go home and going to play with the baby, or take the kid to the park and act like everything's fine, everything's normal, and they're human people. They're humans too, and so it's sometimes hard to deal with that.
You make an excellent point. This applies to psychologists, psychotherapists, police officers, like you were saying. And many people, even if they're not in those very specific professions where we know that happens, they might be dealing with a lot of difficult daily reminders of evil and cheating and fraud. And they have to come back, like you just said, to their home and be well for their family. Is there anything that you recommend? I know beyond the legal stuff, but what do you think people can do? Maybe not a recommendation, but what has helped you be able to cope with this sort of negativity and be able to be such a jolly character outside of work?
Jolly? I don't know if I'm jolly, but I have a brother-in-law who's a professional Santa Claus. He's pretty jolly, but that's a good question, and it's something that you have to find an answer to. For me personally, I'm already a pretty happy person. I'm already I'm typically optimistic. I'm always the first one to say, well, yeah, this stinks, but let's just do it and get it over with. And I try to look for the good in folks, right off the bat. So that's where I start from. That's the personality or the psychological makeup that I start from. Now, with dealing with other people, part of it, it can bring you down. And sometimes I think in the early days it kind of got me down. But I have to divorce myself from my cases from what I do. I'm an investigator. I am gathering facts. I'm looking for information. I'm looking for people. and I'm dealing with people that do not make good choices, or that have done things very wrong, and so I have to say that that's on them. It's not on me. Uh, I'm not doing this to them. They're doing it to themselves, and I am just the person that's investigating. So, but walking helps. Exercise, obviously, talking, talking it out with others, and that's kind of one of the reasons why, there's a real high divorce rate among police officers, but there isn't among police officers who are married to other first responders, like police officers that are married to nurses, ER nurses, or to EMTs, or to firemen or firewomen, fire personnel. I don't know what the term is these days, because then they're able to understand each other, as opposed to someone who has no experience with that. Plus, excuse me, I've got the best wife in the world, the best listener of anyone ever, and so she doesn't judge, and she listens to me, and she can tell when I'm just having to say something because I just got to say it out loud. I'm not saying it to her necessarily. So she's fantastic at that. She's amazing. So that's kind of some of the things that I do, I think.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it will help many people. Having someone who listens to what you say is very important. We discussed this in another episode. We were talking about sort of the business side, but even in business, there's this concept. I like to call it like sounding boards. Like you can have an idea and you might just need to say it out loud so that you yourself give yourself feedback, and maybe just having someone there that even if they don't understand the technical part of it or what you're saying, just by talking to them, you can get more ideas and get it out there and let it flow, let the creativity flow. So I feel that applies to when you have something inside that you need to release, any feelings, right? Having someone there to listen is very, very powerful. And I think, yes, definitely for some, a psychologist, a therapist, etc., is a good option, and some shy away from that, and that's okay too. Just having someone who you can talk to. I think just looking for someone who you can talk to and get it off your chest, like you were saying.
I think it's cathartic to be able to do that. And, people, not everybody can be a therapist or a psychiatrist and listen to people and help them. So, yeah, it takes the right person to, you have to be in the right profession for yourself, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. We were talking about how you go into maybe a public location, you're following a subject, and you're trying not to be recognized. And you're probably very good at that, and the subject does not recognize you, so everything goes as planned. Has it ever happened that somebody recognizes you as Scott, the private investigator, but you're not really tailing them? And have you heard that happen to someone where like, are you following me? Like, but even if they're not an actual subject, but that I recognize the PI as a PI.
Yeah, that reminds me of that movie Donnie Brasco. Remember, he's in Florida and they're in the airport, and a U.S. attorney that he had worked with recognizes him. Hey, he starts calling him, and he's with a bunch of hoodlums. So one of the hoodlums goes over and assaults the guy and say, hey, he's undercover. Don't say anything. It has happened. I think it's happened a couple of times. It's been people that I've known and that have seen me when I'm actually following somebody in public. And I don't recall the actual incidents, but I do recall me saying like that. And they got it right away. And because I didn't say, hey, how are you? And run up to him. I just went like that and walked away. So I think, and then later on I told them what was going on. So, but yeah. And then being caught by people doing surveillance, that does happen. It's called being burned or being made. And if any private investigator tells you, well, that's never happened to me, well, they're probably lying or they haven't done enough surveillance. Because it happens to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how long you've been doing it. Because it's the job takes there's a lot of nuances, a lot of moving parts, and you've got to really be anticipating what's happening ahead of you, and you have to really be focusing. For example, if I'm following somebody down IH-10 and they're in a white F-150, and I start thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, or what I'm going to do for Valentine's Day with my wife, and I look back and I'll see 5 white F-150s, and I don't remember which one was his. So, yeah, so that's kind of the thing. But yeah, you do get made. I don't remember the last time it happened a few years ago, but they just say, "Hey, are you following me?" I just say, well, the best thing to do is just drive away. When you realize it, when you recognize it, just leave the place quietly, and because if they get out their car and start walking towards you, never a good sign. Mm-hmm. So normally I just tell them, "No, I'm not following you. I'm going that way. What's your problem?" And we'll leave it at that. So, but yeah, these days, there's road rage, so you got to be real careful. People freak out.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one. I love your examples because I recognize all the places and streets and locations.
Oh yeah,
from
yeah.
Town,
In fact, I'll give you another story if you got a second.
Yeah,
this is how I got burned once. It was an elderly couple that lived over in Leon Valley.
Uh-huh.
And they were going to the hospital. I knew they had an appointment, so I followed them there. And this was years ago. I was feeling kind of cocky, I guess, like I'm king of the world. I know what I'm doing. I'm the super PI, which is not my style at all. I'm pretty mellow dude. And so I followed them a little bit closer than I should have, and they drove really slow. And following someone who drives slow is harder than following someone who drives fast, because they're very aware, and they come to a full and complete stop. And eventually they notice, why is someone behind me? Whereas someone's driving fast, they're only looking forward. Anyway, they go to the medical center, and they went to Santa Rosa Hospital. I know you know where that is. And they pulled in. I pulled over. I'm a few rows away with my camera, and they get out of the car and they look my way, and they call some security guy, and he's in a little golf cart, and he comes over, and they're all pointing towards me, and I'm like, okay, again, that's what we call in this business a clue. I've been burned. Mm-hmm. So I get the heck out of Dodge. I actually go home and get a different car. Smart. And I come back with a different car for when they leave their appointment. And I got back, their vehicle was still there, same place. I set up in a different position, kind of opposite, and this time I was very careful and not, being an idiot like I was before. They come out in the little golf cart with the security guy. He's escorting them out to their car because they didn't know who I was, mm-hmm. right? And they're looking, their beady eyes are looking left and right and all over. They get in their vehicle and they leave. I follow them. I think they just go home. But excuse me, but I got them home without any incident, because they had no idea at that point. At that point, I was concentrating and focusing on doing the job correctly, instead of just not focusing as I should have been earlier.
That's a good reminder. There's always a good reminder when you're starting to get good at something, and suddenly you sort of forget the basics, and you got reminded. Now the switching the car thing, that was a smart move.
Well, I don't have a fleet of cars or anything. I just have 2 of them, so and I knew they were going to be in the appointment for a while, mm-hmm. and so and I lived in Leon Valley at the time, I believe. So yeah, I just zipped on home, got the car, and went back to the hospital. So yeah, I was pretty lucky there.
Yeah, well, good circumstance. There's a comment here. I'm so sorry, I closed it because I don't want to use the bandwidth here. But Mark, when we were talking about being jolly, he said, "Jolly Scott."
I know several Marks. I'm not sure who that is.
Mark Anderson.
Oh, okay.
He's
pretty jolly too, actually.
Yeah, well, he said you both have positive spirits.
Mark's a great guy.
Yeah, he is, and he was on the show a few episodes ago, and he had some very, very interesting insights into the whole investigative interview process, which was really neat. Before we go, Scott, there is one question I have. If people want to find more about you, your business, and also obviously about the podcast, where can people find you?
So if you want to find the podcast, you can find it on Apple, Spotify, any of the formats. It's A Study in Crime. Oh, you can go to astudyincrime.com, and all the episodes are there. And so that's the podcast. In terms of my book, I happen to have a copy right here.
Ooh, smooth.
Confessions of a Private Eye. I don't know if the letters are backwards on your end. They look backwards to me, but anyway. You can find my book. I wrote it in 2018. It's basically a true crime memoir. I never know how to say that word. I did go to public school. But anyway, you can find it in Amazon. Just go to Amazon. It's available in audio, Kindle, ebook, paperback, hardback, and hopefully it'll be something that you enjoy. And then in terms of my PI work, I'm at fulmerpi.com. That's fulmer.bi.com.
fulmerpi.com. Okay, perfect. And I'll put some of these in the notes as well so that people can know where to find you. I really like on your website you have the right to a podcast. If you cannot afford a podcast, when will we provide it for you?
It just came to me one day. I thought that sounded cool. Yeah, I was reading the old Miranda warning, and I thought you have the right to a podcast. If you cannot afford one will be provided for you. And then at the end, I think I say, you have the right to remain silent, but I hope you'll talk. Tell your friends and family about the podcast. So, yeah, doing a podcast
amazing.
is difficult. It's hard to build an audience up. So I appreciate any support.
Yeah, everyone, you should listen to it. It's a fun listen. And if you're in town, then great, because some of the examples might be right up your alley. So that's
right.
That's what I found very fun too.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. I'm really into pop culture. I'm into all kinds of stuff like that. So I mentioned all that kind of stuff. I also, if I can say one more time, if you go to nisd.net/ACE, you can get the information about my Private Investigator 101 course that's coming out in July. It's 3 specific evenings. I start at the very beginning, and I will tell you everything you need to know to be a successful private investigator.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that again, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. Scott, it has been a fantastic experience talking with you, learning about the whole PI space. I know nothing about it, so this has been an eye-opener, and I hope our listeners feel the same way. I know a lot of them will. Thanks again for coming, and I hope we talk again soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and you have a very groovy shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Mine's kind of boring. I should have worn a groovy shirt.
It's funny. So I'll talk about it. This shirt, I don't know where I got it, but so many people have told me in all sorts of weird scenarios that it's a nice shirt or a groovy shirt or something. Like I'll go to pick up a pizza or something like, oh, nice shirt. Like, thanks. I didn't buy it. Somebody bought it for me. But yeah, I like it. When I wear it, people like it. So thanks for mentioning it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and thank you for coming on. And we're gonna stop the stream here. Thanks, everyone, and see you in the next one.